What's up guys, Ember Power here, and welcome back to a new video. In this one, I'm going to be reviewing the newly revealed Snow Hazard and Clayburst sets. So these have of course been fully revealed. They will release on Japan on April 14th, and these sets, along with Triple Beat that was revealed about a month back now, will combine to create our next English set, Paldea Evolved, on June. Or in June. So yeah, a lot of new cards to talk about, so we can just get straight into it. We have a Scarlet Masquerin. Masquerin does have the panic attack, flip a coin until you get tails. For each heads, discard a random card from your opponent's hand. It's okay, to be honest. I think that's just better control stage 1s. There does seem to be a theme now that a lot more stage 1 Pokemon have these control style attacks, but if you're relying on coin flips, it's usually pretty bad. We also see a new Vespiquen, which there was a Vespiquen in the Sun and Moon era that was doing 120 damage for 1 grass energy, so that should tell you just how far the power creep has come for single prize Pokemon, and it's not very far. But yeah, you have to shuffle a benched Combee and all cards attached to it into your deck. If you don't, then the attack fails. It's an okay attack, to be honest. We have stuff like Zoroark, and I think that's realistically what you'd play this in. But the bottom line is 120 just really isn't a lot of damage these days. Yeah, if you use Define Band or Choice Belt, you can get up to 150, but yeah, 120 just ain't really going to cut it these days. And Abominous Snow prevents Pokemon from being healed, but yeah, it's a stage 1, so it's pretty bad. We see a Tracina, which is prevents stuff from evolving, which is, that's pretty annoying, but ultimately I think it's just a bad stage 2. We got a couple of new Bramblins and the first Bramblegast card from the new era, with the attack Withering Poison, which does 80 damage for 3 colors, and then during your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon's retreat cost is 2 colors more, or their attack cost, sorry. So that is a pretty annoying effect. Does mean stuff just becomes way too expensive to use for a lot of decks. Unfortunately, 80 damage and requiring 3 energy, even with reversal energy in the set, I still think this is a pretty bad card. We also see 2 new Rylor, and then this stage 1 is a Psychic type, so that's why there's no evolution here. Then we see Wu Chienix with the attack Devouring Ivy for 2 grass and a colorless, 60 damage to 20 opponent's bench Pokemon. For each prize card your opponent has taken, and you don't apply weakness and resistance for a bench Pokemon. It's okay, to be honest. I think this is maybe an alright attack in something like Lost Zone or Meowscarada with like your Gardenia's Vigor or something, but I think it scales too slow for, how much power the opponent will have in the mid to late game, so it doesn't leave me very optimistic. 230 HP is actually really nice. It does mean that you'll survive a hit from stuff like Miraidon and what's the other one I'm thinking of? Lugia, without any other modifiers, so Wu Chen is at least a bit bulky in that sense, but unfortunately I think this is scaling a wee bit too slow to be its own kind of competitive deck. Zoomeril's just trash. Love Disc Fine supporters, but it's pretty trash. SQ is actually kind of interesting. 100 damage for 3 water energy. You have to discard all of them, but you do take 100 less damage from attacks. So this is kind of like a decent single prize basic to maybe run in the Baxcalibur deck, like the Baxcalibur Chien-Pao build. And just any kind of Baxcalibur deck that kind of wants to do a lot of damage, but also take 100 less. Now, unfortunately, 100 is painfully 10 short from knocking out a Cramorant against stuff like Lost Zone. So that, of course, is a massive pain. You'll have to find the 10 damage from somewhere else, like Hawlucha. But, yeah, SQ is not terrible. Definitely a one to consider for late game. We have a Cetadol, which has very strong stats, actually, for an evolving basic. But, unfortunately, that's not going to matter because Cetitan is pretty meh. So for 3 energy, it does 80 damage, and if this Pokemon has any special energy, it does 140 more. So that's actually a decent amount, to be honest. Like, what is that? That's 220-ish. That's not terrible, because if you have the reversal energy equipped, if you're behind on prize cards, then this attack is essentially just for 1 reversal energy, and you don't have to worry about water energy or anything like that. So maybe is like attack option in Zoroark, this could be okay. You just run like 1 or 2 copies of this, but you're already running like 4 reverse energy anyway in Zoroark, so yeah, I don't hate Cetitan actually. This is a bit better than I initially thought it would be, so maybe Cetitan is a new Zoroark partner. Then we see a Veluza, I want to say that name is. Looks eerily similar to Basculegion. Has the attack Fillet Corkscrew that does 120 for 4, which is terrible. But if you don't have any cards in your hand, it can be used for a single water energy. Kind of a fun attack to use because we have stuff like the Articuno from Pokemon Go to do plus 10 damage. So in theory, you could just put a bunch of them into play. Of course, all these Pokemon are basics. You have stuff like Squirtle, Bibarel, Altaria maybe. Of course, Arcanine does have like the exact same attack really, but does 160 and is also in a Zoroark deck, which is in theory just more consistent. But honestly, I don't hate this card. I think it's kind of cool. You could definitely do some funky things with it. I think the King Gambit that allows your basics to do plus 30 would also be a good shout here because 150 is considerably better than 120. So yeah, I don't hate this card. Could definitely make a fun deck out of it. Then we have a couple of Frigobacks and Arctobacs as like the new Godzilla kind of style Pokemon. And that all leads to Excalibur, which has the ability Absolute Zero. It says, often is like during your turn, you may attach a basic Water Energy card from your hand to one of your Pokemon. It is literally Deluge. Pokemon are very creative with their abilities, shall we say. But Deluge, obviously an amazing ability, will allow you to accelerate any number of energy from your hand. So stuff like Terrestrial Gyarados, Palkia V-Star, Kyurem VMAX, all viable options now, thanks to Excalibur in the new format. But also mainly here for Chien-Pao. So Chien-Pao has been a super fun deck in testing, has the ability Trembling Cold that says once in your turn, if it's in the active spot, you can just tutor out 2 basic water energy. And then Hail Blizzard is the exact same attack as Raichu V's, so you discard any amount of energy and you do 60 for each one you discard. So it's a very solid deck thanks to the ability, just allowing you to tutor out, always get, guarantee those 2 basic energy. And of course, thanks to cards like Energy Retrieval, Energy Recycler, Superior Energy Retrieval that we'll see from Triple Beat, and of course the Excalibur just means you can readily chain this attack and be doing northwards of 240 to 300 damage like every single turn, which is not unrealistic for this deck. One thing I will say is that it doesn't really have a good single prize option apart from Greninja or SQ, but honestly, I think Chien-Pao is a really solid deck. Might not be tier 1.5 just because you're very fragile and you'll need stuff like Drums of Courage in the deck, but yeah, definitely doesn't seem like it's going to be that bad. Then we see a Slowpoke, which is okay, and a Slowking EX. So this is going to be our second Psychic Terrestrial Pokemon after Dedenne. So 270 HP is pretty decent. Of course, it has the Terrestrial effect that says this Pokemon doesn't take any damage while on the bench. And then Profound Knowledge does 30 in Confusion, which is just meh. And then Wisdom Headbutt does 130, and you may search your deck for up to any 2 cards. So initially I thought about Gardevoir for this card. You could use it as a setup Pokemon in the early game. But honestly, I don't think Gardevoir really needs this. I think this is just like more of a niche control partner, something to do with Raihan and Zoroark box potentially. There's like a couple of fun things you can do with this card. I definitely think being able to search out stuff like Crushing Hammers is going to be really annoying. So yeah, definitely a control-based card. Then we see a Gothitela line, which is just bad, unfortunately. Then we have a Mimikyu with the ability Safeguard, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's EX and V. So very strong ability, sort of outclasses Miltank, sort of doesn't because Miltank has more HP and an easier attack to use in control decks. But of course, Mimikyu walling out V and EX is a massive buff, so yeah, very strong card. This will be seeing a lot of play. This could honestly be what puts control, right on the map, right back on the map firmly. So I could see this seeing play with stuff like Mewtwo V Union. Of course, that Alakazam EX, they're going to attack from the bench whenever that comes out. So yeah, very strong card. Maybe even give new life to Blissey, funnily enough. So yeah, very cool. Then we see a Poltegeist line, which isn't really doing anything. We see a Rabaska, but that's too slow. We then have the Annihilape EX, Annihilape EX, should say, which has 320 HP, and then Angry Grudge for single fighting energy. Allows you to place up to 12 damage counters on this Pokemon, and you do 20 damage for each damage counter you place. So realistically, you don't want to be putting too many damage counters, you just want to be doing enough for a 2-hit KO, and then you can try and take advantage of Cheryl. You could also play stuff like the Rock Chestplate, so you take 30 less damage from attacks, which is pretty good. So honestly, I think this could be okay as like a solid tier 2, maybe tier 3 rogue deck. It's obviously nothing crazy in standard, but I don't hate this card. I think it's pretty cool. So we also have the single prize Annihilate from Scarlet and Violet base set that's really strong. So yeah, I don't think that's very bad at all. Then we have a Sudowoodo with Agility, which isn't going to be doing anything. We see a Gilmet with Ascension, which is really good. It just means that this Gilmora can see significantly more play as a result. And the Gilmora itself has the ability Crystal Break, which says when this Pokemon is knocked out, flip a coin. If heads, your opponent can't take any prize cards for it. So a really annoying effect. And then Floral Spite says your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned. During Pokemon checkup, place 6 damage counters instead of 1. So this card, honestly, is eerily similar to Galarian Weezing from Rebel Clash, which was also the second set of that expansion. And the ability is obviously different, and the poison damage is a bit more than Weezing. But honestly, Crystal Break isn't the worst ability to have. It's definitely a bit flippant, because of course there will be games where you just start flipping a bunch of tails. And then of course Gilmora is just a single squishy prize Pokemon. However, constantly placing 6 damage counters of poison in between turns is very annoying to deal with. There's also the Radiant Sneasler to place additional 2 damage counters, so if you really wanted to, maybe a quad Gilmora deck could be a thing at some point. There's also like a new stadium revealed that says basic Pokemon have like a retreat cost of 1 colorless more, so yeah. Honestly, I think Gilmora is going to be a pretty solid rogue deck. Speaking of rogue decks, we have this Murkrow, which has the Wings of Union attack. For single Dark Energy, it does 20 damage times another Pokemon in your discard pile that have the Wings of Union. So it's a decent modifier if we can get enough Pokemon in the discard pile. Unfortunately, there just really isn't that many with the Wings of Union attack. There is going to be a Wattrel and a Flamigo, which have those attacks. I thought Wattrel had a Dangerous Wings attack instead, but apparently, according to some other people, Wattrel has Wings of Union, so maybe it was mistranslated, I guess. But yeah. But the fact that we only have 3 Pokemon with this, and there is no more in this set, unfortunately, so unfortunately it's just a wee bit bad. You're not quite doing enough damage, which is a shame because Murkrow and Wattrel are of course hitting relevant Lightning and Dark-type weaknesses, so it's cool in that regard, but unfortunately I just don't think it's going to be doing quite enough damage. Then we have Honchkrow, that is once again pure bulk. We have some Mashstiff, which are bulk. Mabostiff is kind of cool, has the Comeuppance attack for 2 colors, does 20 damage, and then basically if this Pokemon is damaged or even if it's knocked out, you get to replicate that damage on the attacking Pokemon. So if a Lugia knocks out Mabostiff, they do take 220 damage in reverse, which is pretty solid, to be honest. It's pretty decent as long as the opponent doesn't gust around it. Could be a nice one-off in Zork decks that are running, double turbos as well as reversal energy, so something to consider. Also, like a lot of good GLC cards in this set, funnily enough. If I scroll back up to, well, yeah, even just as far as Gilmora, this is like obviously a GLC card, I should say. And this Mabostiff is honestly not terrible in GLC either, so nice to see that GLC is getting at least a bit of support. We also see a Bronzor, which does have a pretty cool attack. Draw cards until you have the same number of cards in your hand as your opponent. Just really nice. Will definitely be something to consider for the Trunk League. But honestly, Bronzor is just like, I wish more Evolving Basics had these styles of interesting attacks. But unfortunately, the Bronzong itself isn't going to be doing anything too crazy. 90 plus 70 if you have the same number of cards in your hand as your opponent. Yeah, it's just pretty bad, unfortunately, even if it's for 2 Metal Energy. And we have a Corviknight, which does 50 damage. If your opponent's Pokemon is knocked out, then it gets immunity the following turn, which is okay. But, you have to do 50 damage and knock something out, so yeah, I'm not seeing it with Corviknight, unfortunately. Kufont and Copperajah EX. So Copperajah is a big boy, like he a thick boy. 300 HP, and then Bronze Body says his Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks, and then Nosequake does 260, and then this attack also does 30 damage to each of your bench Pokemon. So Nosequake is a wee bit bad, unfortunately, because we don't really have a proper way of accelerating Metal Energy currently. But honestly, just the fact that it has 300 HP and it takes 30 less from attacks is a really big selling point for this card, I think. There's definitely times where, like, what does a Cramorant realistically do against this? Because you're only doing, 70 damage or something? So 80, 70 damage, yeah. So, yeah, I'm definitely a big fan of Copper Roger, honestly. I think it's kind of cool, but it's just like, how are you ever getting enough energy on there in order to use this attack? Maybe, you just play it in some kind of Lost Zone engine, funny enough, like you Mirage Gate, and that's how you get the energy on there. But could be a fun kind of stolen kind of card. Then we have Earthworm, which has the ability Nutritional Iron, which says if his Pokemon has 3 or more metal energy, it gets plus 100 HP. So it does attack for colors, so you could put this in any deck, even in a Bax Caliber deck, but realistically you just want to play it in a metal energy deck. Of course, we don't have any ways of really accelerating metal energy outside of Magenzone from Astral Radiance. Okay, maybe Copper does have a hope with Magenzone. Now, admittedly, Magenzone is a stage 2, but unfortunately, yeah, I'd say maybe a stage 2 isn't really consistent enough for Copper but you are at least kind of bulky, so you could win them back through that. But Earthworm for 4 colors does 100 damage and then 30 snipe, which is pretty bad to be honest. But honestly, having 230 HP is, it's very sizable for a basic single prize Pokemon. You could also get it to 280, which is Lugia V-Star territory if you have a Charm of Courage on Earthworm. So obviously this in GLC with a better Magnezone is absolutely terrifying. So yeah, massive buff for metal types in GLC, but in standard could be okay, I guess. Then we have Dunsparce and Dunsparce, which is unfortunately going to be a bit of a Lugia card, I think. Sun Flash for 4 colors does 100 damage and they're now paralyzed. Shuffle this Pokemon or cards attached to it back into your deck. So the idea is use Archeops to, of course, power this up in one turn. You get 2 Archeops going. And then basically you just do Sun Flash, 100 damage, guarantee Paralysis, shuffle it back into the deck, and promote something like a Mimikyu or your next Lugia. But yeah, pretty devastating card and could be decent. We also have a Pelipper with the ability Win Letter that says when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may either tutor out a supporter card or retrieve a supporter card. So we have literally just seen a Meowstic in Silver Tempest, which allowed you to tutor out 2 supporters when it evolved. So I think this is strictly better than Meowstic because, of course, having the choice of retrieving or searching is obviously really good. So that's nice to see. Unfortunately, we don't have Scoop Up Net anymore, and you can't penny to pick up this guy. So fortunately, I think it's a bit bad. Then we see a Slacking line, which has the ability Back to Bed. It says during Pokemon checkup, if this Pokemon is asleep, you flip 2 coins instead of 1. If either of them are tails, this Pokemon is still asleep. So they continue to nerf stage 2s for whatever reason, even though this Pokemon is never surviving a hit from anything relevant. So yeah, that's unfortunate. And then the attack Lazy Headbutt for 3 colors does 240, and this Pokemon is now asleep. So funnily enough, we will actually see a Stage 1 Wigglytuff, I believe, from the next mini set to review, which does say once in your turn you may accelerate a Therapy Energy from your hand, and Therapy Energy basically says this Pokemon can't be put to sleep, or it can't be poisoned, not poisoned, it's confused and paralyzed and asleep. So basically you can use Wigglytuff to accelerate Special Energy and then attach a double turbo. You could use Reversal Energy and just swing for 240, hope for the best, but honestly, because you have so little HP, I think that's kind of like why these stage 2s will always fail, which is a shame, but probably the sad truth. Then we have Rookidee and Corvuswire to go with the Corviknight earlier. And then Squawkabilly EX, a very cool card with the ability Lively Draw, can only be used on the first turn of the game. But if you do, you may discard your hand and draw 6. And it's not when you play it from your hand onto the bench, so you can actually nest ball for this guy and then use the ability, which is cool. It also has the attack Energy Flow, which does 20 damage, and you get to attach up to 2 basic energy cards if you discard power to one of your Pokemon. It's fine. Honestly, the attack is fine. I think the ability is obviously the main selling point. It is very squishy though, which is a massive concern in this day and age. The fact that most Pokemon can just boss KO this for 2 out of 6 prize cards is very concerning, but yeah, the ability definitely helps with turbo decks, just any kind of deck that really wants to go fast in the early game, that is maybe susceptible to bad hands or bricking. Yeah, Lively Draw is definitely going to help. We also see a reprint of Super Rod, which is a welcome return for any single prize deck. We also have Motivational Lemonade that says, basically, if you're losing the game, if you have more prize cards remaining, then you get to heal 60 from one of your Pokemon. So, very nice in a store control deck because naturally you're not taking prize cards, and the opponent will eventually take some prize cards, so having the option to use this, maybe in Mewtwo v Union, this could be quite scary because you can just place a bunch of damage counters with Mewtwo v Union while healing the damage, and then of course you can go for the big one it kills after that and hoover up. So yeah, very cool card, should see some play. Then we have Grusha, which is drawn to the F5. If you have no energy cards attached to any of your Pokemon, drop to 7. It's okay. Like, it's fine. I think there's like some niche uses for Grusha, like if you only need one energy card to attack with your main attacker, maybe. But yeah, it just seems pretty bad when most decks, funnily enough, need energy to do anything. So yeah, Grusha seems pretty bad. Giacomo says discard a special energy from each of your opponent's Pokemon. So if Mew VMAX ever gets in a board state where they have a Fusion Strike energy on 2 different Pokemon as well as a double turbo, this could obviously be very disruptive. But of course, that might not even buy you enough turns of the game because decks that do that with special energy usually have a wave accelerating it, or they just need 1 or 2 attachments. But honestly, not a bad card for disruption. Then we see Snow Mountain of Disaster, which is really lame. Honestly, I love the artwork, but I really wish stadiums were just more interesting than what we're getting, because this really is just kind of a reprint of Old Cemetery from Chilling Reign, and that felt way too recent, so I kind of wish Pokemon would do more interesting things with stadiums. But this one says, whenever any player attaches an energy to one of their basic non-water Pokemon, place 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. So it's not relevant if they ever evolve, which is pretty bad. So yeah, I don't think this card is actually particularly great. There's definitely better cards to play in the Chien-Pao deck as well. So that's kind of what they were going for with combos. But honestly, I just don't think it's that good. Then probably one of the best cards in the set, or at least the most interesting, is going to be Reverse Energy. So if you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent, this card, when it's attached to an evolution Pokemon that doesn't have a Roblox, so just a single prize Pokemon basically, it provides 3 of any energy. So this is like 3 Rainbow Energy if you're losing the game, but only on a Stage 1 single prizer. So all the Stage 1 single prizers in Standard have to be reevaluated now because they could potentially be techs in Zoroark. You could also use this in like a Stage 2 deck to be more efficient, but realistically I think this is going to be a Zoroark tool card, so that's at least pretty cool. Then we finally make it over to Clayburst, and Jumpluff is pretty bad, so we're going to skip him. Fortress EX has a pretty cool ability, honestly, allowing you to surge your deck to 5 grass energy attaching to your Pokemon. But if you do, this Pokemon is knocked out. I have reviewed this card several times already. It's pretty mid. It's going to be an okay card. Something for Blissey, Wu Chen maybe, but honestly I don't think Fortress is that good. Then we see a Heracross, which is bulk. We see even more Tarantula because we don't have enough spiders already. Spidops, what do? Each player shovels their active Pokemon into their deck. That's pretty annoying, to be honest, if you can get it set up. Of course, there's stuff like in GLC with a Venusaur, so maybe this is another GLC card. Numel is looking rather cute, but Camerupt has the attack eruption for fire colors. Does 50, each player discards top color deck. It does 100 more for each energy discard in this way. I mean, that is kind of decent if you can discard 2 energy, because then you're doing 250 at that point, which is very solid for 2 energy. It's a lot more than most of the other Stage 1s are doing for 3 energy, so that's kind of appealing. Of course, you will have to find a way of guaranteeing the energy on both players' decks, which is really annoying. There is switching cups for your deck, but of course that won't work for your opponent. The Gothitila that I skimmed over earlier could potentially do that, but that's a Stage 2, so there's no way that's going to work with this. So yeah, we need some kind of basic that can manipulate the opponent's top deck, but I do think Camerupt is like a solid budget deck, probably. It seems okay. Then we have yet another Fletch into Talonflame. Look, I love Talonflame as a Pokemon. I just wish he would either have better cards or less cards, because this is like the 4th Talonflame I've seen in recent years, and it's another bad one. It does 70 damage and then 90 more, so it's only doing 160 if it has any damage counters on it. Of course, we'd want to use Magma Basin at this point, but 160 is just so low these days, and it only has 150 HP. Like, there's just no way this is ever good, unfortunately. We have 2 Charcadets and then a Chi-Yu EX. So Chi-Yu is kind of a cool card. 190 HP makes it very squishy, but Burning Envy does mill 2 from the opponent's deck, so maybe a mill deck here. You know, we get Crushing Hammers involved, Misfortune Sisters, we stick a Charm of Courage, then we're at 240 HP, so honestly, Burning Envy maybe isn't the worst attack to build a deck around. There's a Stadium as well we're going to review later, which basically increases retreat cost by 1 colorless more, so I don't know, I think GU has some mill potential. Also, Flame Surge does 100 damage, and you get to accelerate 3 basic energy to 3 different Pokemon from your deck, so it's okay, to be honest. Like, if you could find a way of always getting that attack off and going second, 100 damage while also accelerating 3 energy is really strong, so yeah. I really like this card, honestly. I think it could be really good. Burning Envy is definitely the most appealing aspect, but yeah, could be cool. Then we see yet another Pikachu and Raichu. This Raichu is going to be like a power crept version of the Raichu from Evolving Skies. 200 damage for 3 energy, and you have to discard all energy. It's okay. It's another one of these like Fluffy box kind of attackers, but unfortunately I think Fluffy just has enough options already. You know, you could use this with Reversal Energy if you really wanted to, but I think there's just better options at that point, so pretty bad. But we do see yet another Luxray, just seeing one of these in Crown Zenith. But this Luxray has the ability Overflowing Ray, which basically says if this card is in your hand and you have more prize cards than your opponent, you could just put this onto the bench. So you just ignore the fact that it's a stage 2 and just slap it onto the bench as if it was a basic, which is really cool because it means that we can Fluffy to it, and it also means that we have stuff like Reversal Energy. So this is like the prime combo with Reversal Energy. Also being able to do 180 is huge. It means stuff like Lost Zone can now 1-hit KO Pikachu VMAX, which is big. It means that Zorok has yet another toolbox option. It also just means any deck that wants to capitalize on Lugia not playing Dunsparce can also take advantage of it. Honestly, just a super cool Pokemon. Also, for all intents and purposes, this is a stage 2 Pokemon, I think, so it doesn't it doesn't count as a basic for Pikachu VMAX, I'm pretty sure, so that's cool. Also, funny worth mentioning comment is that this is just like, this is literally the effect of EAB. Like, EAB says that stage 2 Pokemon can be played from the hand onto the bench, so whenever I see something like this, I'm like, oh, that's cool. But yeah, Luxray, very cool card in Standard. Then we see a Pinchurin, which is pretty bad from what I remember. Yeah, so 20 damage, Coin of Heads, Paralysis, whatever. Static Sazzle does 100, but only if this Pokemon... You see, this card could have been a lot better if it just said if any of your Pinchurin had used Stun Needle, because then you could have a Pinchurin deck, but I just think it's too bad, unfortunately. Then we see some Tadbulbs that are pretty bad. Bellybolt EX does guarantee Paralysis, but he is a bit of a thick boy. He's a bit tanky, you know, but 160... I'm not sold on Bellybolt. I think it's okay. The problem is there's just so many lightning types that are good, so it's stiff competition, you know. Wigglytuff can accelerate a Therapy Energy, which is just a 1 colorless energy that ignores Sleep, Paralysis, and Confusion, which is cool, but, you know, just 1 colorless energy accelerated from hand is pretty meh. Maybe in Blissey, though, as an alternative way of accelerating energy. We then see a Spiritomb that's kind of cool. Shuts off basic V abilities, so like Luminion, Wiredeer, Genesect, that's pretty big. Unfortunately, I don't think it's too crazy. I don't think this card is as good as people give it credit for. Like, it's techable, yeah, but honestly, I think Mewtwo doesn't really care about Genesect, especially when it gets set up, so it's iffy. Like, I don't know how to feel about this card, to be honest. I think it's just super niche. I think Drapiron's just a better card overall, and Mew VMAX could honestly use this itself to turn off stuff like, what's it called, Drapions and stuff. So, but yeah, it shuts off Drapion as well. Wait, what? Okay, so yeah, Spiritomb, it's kind of fun, kind of cool, but yeah, I don't think it's particularly great. We then see a Palossand, which is one of these, you pay 3 energy, then you maybe do more damage, but 160 is just such a low modifier. Ceruledge does 100, and if your opponent is an active, is an EX or V, it does 100 more, so 200 with Reverse Energy is pretty solid, but you're not knocking out basic stage, well, just basic EX Pokemon, so yeah, it's a bit iffy, to be honest. It could be okay, though, I guess, in a Psychic box, if you're just trying to hit weakness on Urshifu and stuff. There is going to be a Tinkatank line, or Tinkaton, with Humongous Hammer, which does 30 damage for each card in your hand. Unfortunately, not a very good attack because the new supporter that will force each player to shuffle their cards into their deck, or put it on the bottom of the deck, I should say, and then draw a card for each remaining prize card, so you can just reset. There is stuff like, I think it's Milotic or something, but Milotic's stage 1. I mean, come on, like, you're not going to put a stage 1 in play and a stage 2 just to use Humongous Hammer to maybe do enough damage. It's kind of funny that it's called Humongous Hammer, but yeah, I just don't think this card is very good. We see a Larvitar Pipitar, so that should give you a clue that we're seeing a Trinitar later on in the video. Barbaroach is meh. Whiscash is kind of fun actually. Rock Wildly for each fighting energy. You can discard the top card of your opponent's deck. That's kind of cool actually, because we have stuff like the Claydol and as well as like the Blastoise, but I don't think you're ever milling enough damage, unfortunately, which is a shame. Or milling enough cards, I should say, but yeah, could be kind of cool. Then we see a Toxicroak, which is just bland, a Carbobble, which is just bland, a Passimium, which is just bland. We see a Knuckle stack, a Knuckly line, so like the Minecraft Pokemon, which is kind of cool. Gargankle with the ability Blast Salt. During Pokemon Checkup, you can heal 20 from each of your Pokemon, and then Knockhammer mills a card. It's kind of cool, to be honest. I guess in some kind of tanky healing stall deck for basics, maybe this is okay. But honestly, healing 20 isn't a lot, even if it's technically heal 40, assuming it survives a turn. So I don't know. I think this is okay. I think it needed to have been heal 30, really, but yeah, could be okay. Then we have Ting-Lu, EX, 240 HP, pretty bulky. Cursed Ground says if this Pokemon is your active, opponent's Pokemon with damage counters have no abilities, excluding EX, unfortunately. So, if you use this on Genesect, they won't have an ability. Funny enough, if you hit a Manaphy, it won't have an ability, but that won't matter because you don't have a spread attack necessarily. So, it's a weird card, to be honest. I think it's okay. You can shut off stuff like Cramorant, which is fun, but they have stuff like Switching Card to heal the damage. So, it's like this Tom and Jerry cat and mouse style play style where you're like hitting stuff that can heal. And yeah, it just gets a bit weird pretty quickly. It can be quite bulky if you have like Chestplate and Crydon, but honestly, I just don't think this card is doing enough to be, to warrant its inclusion basically as a deck. So maybe it's a one-off in Crydon, but I'm not feeling it for Ting-Lu, unfortunately. Then we have a Sneasel Weavile, which is okay. It has a pretty interesting ability actually. Once in your turn, when this Pokemon moves from the bench to the active, you get to gust up a Pokemon. But it's only a benched basic Pokemon, so it's already just, yeah, okay, maybe we'll just move on. Trinitar has the Route attack, which is 30 damage and then 30 more for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Really efficient. It's basically what Oinkology EX does, but I think it does a bit more damage. And then Dread Mountain does 230, and you get to discard the top 4 cards of your deck. Yeah, it's not very good, unfortunately. Maybe in GLC, if we need another Dark-type Stage 2 deck in GLC, you could maybe make this work as a standard budget deck, but honestly, I just don't think it's doing enough damage between Route and Dread Mountain, so bit of a shame, but another bad Stage 2, unfortunately. Then we have a Shrewdle Giraffe, is that how you pronounce his name? But anyway, the Colorful Monkey does 40 damage for each basic energy that you discard from your hand, but it's each type of basic energy, so it's not just basic dark energy. Okay, why did they have to do that? Like, this card wasn't going to see play anyway for each basic dark energy, but the fact that it's each type of basic energy, oh, that's just terrible. Yeah, that's just a really bad card, unfortunately. Yeah. Bombardier, search it out for basic, put onto the bench, 120, discard energy. It's okay in GLC. Then we do see the first and only dragon types in this set. This is going to be the fact. I just find it amusing that we're going to see 2 dragon type Pokemon in Paldea Evolved, and it's literally just a Noibat and a Noivern. It does beg the question, are they going to remove these from the main set and save them for another set that has more dragon types in them? I don't know, but it seems a bit weird that we only got these 2 and nothing else. But yeah, Noivern EX, pretty cool card nonetheless. Covert Flight does 70, and then it gets immunity from basic Pokemon, which is pretty cool. And then Dominant Echo does 140, and then your opponent can play any special energy or stadium. Then it also has free retreat, so you can switch into stuff like Mimikyu for a control-based archetype. So I think this is kind of cool. You could definitely play this in a Zork box because of the double turbo attack cost, which is cool. Dominant Echo isn't particularly great in standard right now, but Covenant Flight, or Curvet Flight, I should say, is pretty strong. So yeah, I could definitely see this thing play at some point. Jaffarig is bulk. Fari Giraffe is like a control-based stage 1, but doesn't look too good. Fletchling, of course, evolving into the Talonflame we saw earlier is pretty bad. And then the Mousehold can place up to 4 damage counters on each opponent's Pokemon, but it has to have 4 Mousehold in play, so it's pretty bad. And then we see a Flamigo with the Wings of Union attack, which for 2 colors does 20 for each Wings of Union Pokemon. So ideally, you want to be using Murkrow because it only attacks for a single dark. But thankfully, Flamigo can actually tutor out 3 other Flamigos when you put it from your hand onto the bench. So yeah, that is at least a plus for this deck. You can at least find the Pokemon a little bit easier. Then we have Delivery Drone, which is pretty bad. Yeah, flip 2 coins at both of my heads. Yeah, that's a pretty bad card. Charm of Courage, basic Pokemon gets plus 50 HP. That's pretty good, honestly. It means stuff like Chien-Pao and Miraidon is just a lot more bulkier. We have Saguaro. Heal 50 damage for up to 2 of your Pokemon. That's like okay, honestly. Is healing 50 that relevant though? I mean, maybe if you're like switching around with a bunch of Pokemon trying to be tankier, like the Copperaja EX potentially. So I don't hate this card. Could see some niche play. Lono or Iono, each player shovels a hand, puts it on the deck, then draws a card for each remaining prize cards. Best card in the set. It's going to be a 3 or 4 of in nearly every deck. Top tier card. Wilderness of Disaster. Retreat cost of each basic Pokemon except fighting is 1 colors more. Yeah, it's okay. In like control decks, it's pretty niche. It's going to mean stuff like Spidops can do more damage, which is cool, but ultimately I don't think this is going to have too much of an impact. And then Therapy Energy is the special energy that says this Pokemon can't be asleep, confused, or paralyzed. So yeah, it's a bit niche. So there is some good stuff in this set, a lot of GLC stuff, a lot of bulk. There is some cool ones like the Noivern and Slowking. Fairly underwhelming, if I'm going to be brutally honest, but yeah, Speed Hour Power, thank you for watching. Hope you'll see you next time. And yeah, thank you for watching.